All right, good morning and thanks for joining us for this special webinar with Tom Szaky in honor of Earth Day. Let's get started, if I can see my slides. Lillian, here we go. Honor of Earth Day. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Suzanne Day, but I'm going to stay quiet today because Lillian is going to do most of the talking. Lil, introduce yourself, please.
Sure, I'm Lillian Duarte with Commute Solutions, and I typically will handle the polls and and questions and so forth, and I'll kind of be doing a little bit of all of that today, but the main star of our show is Tom. But before I introduce Tom, Susan, would you like to introduce yourself?
You bet. I'm Susan Nordman. I'm the newest member. I'm the new kid on the block with the Commute Solutions team. So I'll kind of be in the background and help in any way I can. And now I'll pass it to Annette.
Hello, I'm Annette Fettig with Commute Solutions, and I'm usually behind the scenes helping to look up stuff, answer questions, technical difficulties, and basically in charge of all the peeps. Back to you, Lil.
Thank you, Annette. All right,
Awesome.
Well, I am so thrilled to introduce today's guest speaker, Tom Szaky. He is the CEO of TerraCycle and Loop, and he serves on the board of directors with the Product Stewardship Institute, the World Economic Forum, and many others, and holds an international baccalaureate from Upper Canada College. He's authored 4 books and writes for news outlets such as Tree Hugger and Packaging Europe. And for those of you not familiar with TerraCycle and Loop, TerraCycle is a social enterprise that eliminating the idea of waste and is a global leader operating in 20 countries. They work with some of the world's largest brands, retailers, and manufacturers to recycle products and have found that nearly everything that we touch can be recycled. And with our help, they've diverted millions of pounds of valuable resources from landfills all over the world. Through Loop, consumers can purchase products from Haagen-Dazs, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, Pantene, and others in durable, reusable containers that can be returned for cleaning and refill, which is awesome. And Tom and TerraCycle have received hundreds of social, environmental, and business awards and recognition from a range of organizations, including the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and Fortune magazine. So it is my pleasure to turn it over to you, Tom.
Thanks for having me. Thanks to all for the kind introduction, and for everyone who's with us today attending. We're just going to do a quick tech piece so I can get my screen up and running. Suzanne, thank you for transferring over all the rights here so I can get this going. I'll just give that a momentary pause while we do that. Here we are. And may I just confirm that you can see the screen? Is that coming through okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, folks, first and foremost, again, just to reemphasize, it's just a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to celebrate Earth Day coming up on April 22nd. And to do that, I'm here to talk to you about my absolute favorite topic in the world that we've been working on diligently for now 20 years, which is the idea of waste. I want to share with you what we've learned about it, what we're trying to do to solve it, eliminate it, elevate it, all these different things. But before going in there, just to give you a little context of TerraCycle, because that's what I'm going to be drawing all of my examples from and learnings from. We are a mission-driven a social enterprise. You can view us as a waste management company, if you will. And our focus is to try to do things that typical waste management companies don't yet do. So that could be from recycling things that are hard to recycle or not locally recyclable today, to helping companies make their products from hard to recycle materials, all the way to reusables. We have a foundation that operates in the US as a public charity, but also in Thailand, cleaning up rivers. In fact, last year we pulled about 1 million pounds of river plastic out of the rivers before it ended up in the oceans. And then we do a lot in how do we have an innovation department that thinks about other ways that we can really think about creating value out of waste so that it doesn't get treated in the way it is treated today. From a geographic point of view, we today operate in 21 countries around the world. You can see those pictured here, and you may see some different colors, right? So in Thailand, it's purple because we operate as a foundation. Everywhere else, we operate as TerraCycle, and then the countries in blue, we don't just do recycling, but we also have our reuse capabilities available today. But this started all 20 years ago, and I thought I'd share a little bit about the context of how we started and to think, to give you a little sense of our thinking around this this entire topic. So, for me, I was born back in '82 in Hungary, and that's only really relevant because it was still communist at the time. It was under the Iron Curtain. So I have a lot of, we have many team members in Kiev, in the Ukraine, or half of our IT organization sits there. Hungary is right next door, so I have a lot of empathy for what's happening out in that region right now, and it's a really sad thing. And sort of ironically, when I was 4 in '86, Chernobyl occurred, which was the big nuclear meltdown in the Ukraine, and that destabilized the borders in the Eastern Bloc countries for a few days. And my parents, when I was 4, with them with me in tow, they were able to escape as political refugees, and we went to Germany, then Holland, then Belgium, seeking asylum, and finally landed in Canada. And so, at the age of 7, I was in North America, and grew up effectively in Canada, and then came to college in New Jersey, which is where I'm speaking to you from today. And I mentioned this sort of geographic journey because I had the privilege of going from communism to capitalism and fell in love with everything capitalism has to offer. I mean, it's the American dream is a capitalist concept, one where, if you work really hard, you can effectively build, whatever you dream, as long as you have a good idea and put a lot of work against it. And I fell in love with it, to be honest, for selfish reasons. I figured that it was my ticket to fame and fortune. This was back at like a young teenager age. And I remember this so clearly. I went to college. One of the first classes at Princeton, the professor gets up on stage, it's an introduction to economics, and asks the question, what's the purpose of business? And it's a very appropriate opening question. And the answer she was looking for was somewhat uninspiring. The answer was maximize profit for shareholders. And I get the purpose of profit. Profit is critically important, but I would argue that profit is more of an indication of health, right? If you're profitable, you're going to flourish and grow. And if you're not profitable, then the opposite will happen. But is it really the purpose? Is it really the reason we interact with a company or go to work, or whether we serve a company as an employee or as a vendor or as a consumer, as a customer? And so I had this dream of starting to think about business ideas that focused on purpose first for environment or society, and then would do that at a profit so it can flourish and be healthy and grow. And most companies don't have the moment the idea came out, like that moment of inception, the photo, but this is actually the very minute, or the very moment, if you will, that the idea for TerraCycle emerged. While I was down in school in New Jersey, my friends from Toronto, many of them have gone to Montreal to go to McGill, and they were growing plants in their basement, which, I mean, today these are legal in Canada. Back 20 years ago, they were a little bit more suspect, and they couldn't make them work. Indoor gardening, it's not so easy. And one day, they were able to make it all function well. And we were celebrating this great gardening, and I asked my friends, what did you do? And Pete, who was the gardener, the guy in the glasses, said, well, I was taking organic waste, feeding it to worms, and taking the worm poop and feeding it to the plants. And that lit this light bulb off for me, not because the plants were doing great. I mean, that was fun and wonderful, but because it was solving an issue. And the issue was, in this example, organic waste. 50% of the food we produce today is disposed somewhere during the supply chain. In between the farm and our stomach, 50% is disposed. It could be not optimally looking, fruits and vegetables. It could be rot in the supply chain. It could be things that are produced that are not sellable, or things that are cooked but we don't eat, and so on and so forth. And there's so many interesting anomalies I found in the idea of waste. Like, we live in a world where it's highly materialistic. In fact, we may measure our status in society proportional to the stuff we own. But isn't it crazy in a world like that, that everything we possess will one day be property of a garbage company? And in fact, 99% of what we buy will be property within the year of purchase of a garbage company. And for how big that idea is, the waste management industry is also one of the least innovative industries per dollar of revenue it enjoys. So there's all these anomalies. Nevertheless, we came back, had this idea, and so wanted to start a worm poop business, focusing on how do we eliminate the idea of waste by making organic waste into worm poop and selling it. So we developed a machine that did that, and set it up and started shoveling rotting waste into it. And yes, out came worm poop, which was fantastic. And since we couldn't afford packaging, as you could see pictured here, and this became our first product. This is how TerraCycle began. And in fact, the logo for TerraCycle is a worm. That's how we first drew it. And the word Terra is earth, and cycle, so earth cycle. That's how it all began. And we learned a lot of really interesting lessons, especially when we started packaging and used soda bottles. First, soda bottles or any waste stream is highly standardized. So what's important about this is when you solve it in country A, It's the same in country B, C, D, all the way to X. In the world of soda bottles, for example, all the heights are the same of every bottle. The treads, the cap tread, if you will, is the same. The base is the same. And there's only 4 possible volumes. There's half liters, 20 ounce, 1 liter, and 2 liter. All the other volumes that are out there, like these tiny bottles or weird bottles, make up a tiny, negligible percentage of the aggregate. And so you can run high speed on a high-speed bottling line, mixed-use soda bottles, which is a huge breakthrough that enabled this product to exist. And then we learned another really interesting thing. Once this product started getting listed at Walmart, Home Depot, and other retailers, and we were off to the races, is that turns out garbage has intellectual property rights. We were alerted about this fact when we heard from the lawyers at Coke and Pepsi, who both said that we were infringing on their unique shape, which is a trademark, by taking it and packaging fertilizer in it. And while we were shocked, they were absolutely right. Unfortunately for us, they do own the shape, even when it's waste. It's crazy that garbage has intellectual property rights, but nevertheless it does. And this lit off another big lesson for me, especially, and this is a lesson for anyone who's out there championing sustainability, whether you're an intrapreneur inside your organization or an entrepreneur, that is convincing other organizations to be more sustainable. There's a huge power in purpose. And so what we did, because we had no way to fight this particular concern from these beverage companies, is we invited them down. And by the time I'd left school, we found an abandoned building in Trenton, New Jersey, which is where I'm actually speaking to you from today. And Trenton's one of the toughest cities in all of the United States. Has a high murder rate, very high poverty rate. To eliminate the idea of waste by making products out of waste. And we realized, unfortunately, that we're not. Because when you make a product out of waste, even if it's out of waste, the product is the business hero. So you're going to pick the very best inputs to make that product. It was certain organic waste from here, but not there. It was bottles that were used, but ones that hadn't been crushed, maybe driven over by a vehicle in a recycling plant and so on. And so we said we have to change the model completely. But before we do that, we had to really understand much deeper this concept of waste, the entire idea of waste. And isn't it crazy for how big of an issue and how everything ends here? This is not even taught in universities today. There are no courses on the idea of waste and what this is, while there are very esoteric courses on dead languages and maybe even the poetry of those languages and so on. And so let's do this together. First and foremost, I would argue garbage doesn't exist in nature. It's an entirely man-made idea. And now that is to say, animals have outputs. Organisms have outputs. A chimpanzee has what it exhales, the carbon dioxide. It has what it puts in a toilet, its fecal matter and its urine. And it also has its body parts, and when it dies, the body itself. So it has all those things. But those things are not useless inputs to other organisms. In fact, other organisms really need those, right? Trees need to inhale the carbon, and many bugs and microbes and so on really want the stuff that goes in the toilet or the body parts. What humans have created is this unique output, an output that is useless to humans and useless to anything else. Now, we've also done this really recently, so animals have no idea that the concept of garbage even exists, because the idea of garbage is only 70 years old as an idea. It's incredibly modern, right? That's why turtles think fishing nets are seaweeds. Crabs, take up residence in garbage as well. Why birds build their nests from cigarette butts and so on and so on. So if it's a modern idea, when did it come about and why did it come about? And I would argue garbage came about in the 1950s when two things happened. We suddenly fell in love with the idea of consumption. Today, we buy 10 times more stuff than we did 80 years ago. It's insane. And you could see it. Like, imagine how many socks our grandparents had in their sock cabinet versus us. Or any object, how big our homes are, how many cars we have, and the fact that we even have a car, and so on and so forth. Our level of consumption is incredibly big. And in fact, about an order of magnitude per capita. And of course, the human population has also grown by about an order of magnitude in the same period of time. That's about a 100-fold increase on the strain on the planet. And to make matters worse, what we make this stuff from, that we buy, is made from complex materials that are useless to us when they have an end of life. Of course, we want to throw them away, but they're also useless to anything else. And that, I would argue, is the modern idea of waste. And this is what it looks like. I mean, this is, but this is the same as if you walked into a Walmart or any retailer. This is just, so puts it a little bit clearer from a visual point of view. So where does it all go, right? 25% is informally disposed, whether it's on our beaches or in our oceans, natural environments. A small, tiny percentage is recycled. We're going to get into that in a moment, but about 2-3%. And the balance is burned or buried, which are the cheapest legal methods of disposing or properly managing of these waste streams. And in countries that have higher wealth and higher density, we tend to incinerate more. And in countries that have lower density and or lower wealth, we tend to landfill more. So then the question became, okay, well, if we're going to start working on this and leaning in, what makes something recyclable? What is the actual, thing that allows something to be recycled while other things have to go to the trash? And I think there's some misunderstandings here, because when we've done really detailed consumer insights, what generally citizens say is what goes in the recycling bin is what can be recycled. In other words, if it's designed to be able to be recycled, the recycling bin accepts it, and if it isn't, I must throw it in the trash. And what industry tends to say is it's about the technical capability of the object, and is there available infrastructure to process that object with that technical capability. And in digging into this a lot, I would argue that there's truth in both those statements, but neither is actually squarely on the answer. What makes something recyclable is one simple thing. Can your local garbage company make money? That's it. Because remember, garbage companies are for-profit enterprises as well. They're there to serve their shareholders. And they're going to do things that are profitable, and they will avoid doing things that are not profitable. And so the equation of recyclability really is, if the cost of collecting the waste and processing it is greater than the value of the resulting material, like it is for a dirty diaper or a cigarette butt or a toothbrush, it won't be recycled. Inversely, if the cost of collecting and processing that waste is lower than the value of the material, like it is for an aluminum can or a PET bottle or our newspaper, it will be recycled. And that is the everything. Now, that's good to know, because the issue here is one of economics. And so at least when we started doing this journey, we understood that that's where we have to focus on. We have to start with solving the economics. And the very first place to begin is, of course, products that are linear. That's the take, make, waste. Products that are farmed and mined to be produced, used, and then disposed. And the first thing we have to do is figure out how can we collect and recycle them into something else. And so as we take that same philosophy of what makes something recyclable is whether a garbage company can make money, then you can start splitting waste streams into things that are recyclable, like PET bottles and so on, not because they're special, but because they're profitable to recycle. It's sort of like littering gold. If you littered gold, there would be no issue because people would pick it up right away. But if you litter something that no one wants, well, it'll stay as litter. And then there's everything else. And in fact, 80% of objects fall today in the non-recyclable category. So the solution to this became a business solution. And this is our business equation in full transparency. We ask a stakeholder, which could be a brand, a retailer, a city, an individual, you can even buy these services from us, to pay for whatever it costs to collect the waste and process it, minus whatever the results are worth. And if someone's willing to fund that cost, then anything can be recycled. But we also learned another very important lesson here, and this is really important if you're trying, to steward any type of sustainability, not just about waste, but say about climate change or about the fact that we're having species diversity loss or deforestation or water quality, you name it. What's so important is to make sure that there's more value being produced by investing in that sustainability challenge than cost. Because if that is the case, then these systems will scale and flourish and thrive. So for example, if a consumer product brand funds one of these programs, then what is the value they get? Well, they get, of course, sustainability. Yes, a Gillette razor blade can now be recycled, and people, line up and do that, which is wonderful. But it also drives some good communication value. It drives also benefits at retail environments. The more benefits we can tease out, the more the companies are willing to lean in and focus on what we care about, which is to make these recycling programs as absolutely big as possible. And through such a method, we found that everything, absolutely everything, can become circular. Everything can go around. There's very few things that fall outside this, which would be maybe objects that are regulated to not be allowed to be recycled, certain medical waste, for example, but technically everything can. Now there's a hierarchy to this, right? What is the least sustainable thing we can do with waste is litter it, right? By far. I imagine everyone will agree, so I won't go into why litter is the worst, but it's absolutely the worst. Better than litter would be putting it all in one place, controlled litter. Let's call that landfilling. Better than that is to incinerate the waste, burn it, and ideally get energy recovered. Noting some waste burns at positive caloric value, which means positive energy value, plastics do and papers do, and some waste streams burn at negative energy value. In other words, you have to put more energy in, then you get energy back. A good way to tell this, by the way, is if you took a lighter, a flame, if you will, to an object, if it would catch on fire, it will have positive caloric value. And if it doesn't catch on fire, like trying to burn an apple that's still fresh, I mean, if you put enough fire to an apple that's fresh, it will become ash, but you're going to have to keep burning it and burning it and burning it, and that's an example of negative caloric value. And those are linear solutions. Circular solutions, ones where the material can go around, start with recycling, where you value the material an object is made from. Better than that is upcycling, where you value the material and the form the material is in. Even better than that is reuse, where you value the form, the material, the composition, the form it's in, and its intention. So, for example, in disposable goods, here's how we've reused 35 million margarine containers to package plants at Walmart. That would be reuse in a disposable package. Upcycling looks something like this. Here's a jacket we made for a friend of ours, to wear on his show. But these two things only account for a small percentage of waste. The majority of, say, chip bags are recycled, where they're shredded and melted into, for example, here, where 30% of these vehicles are made from recycled chip bags. And we found through this process, everything can go around. Whether it's cigarette butts that are today collected and recycled across 400 cities around the world. This is pictured in Vancouver, British Columbia. Whether it's aerosol containers into exercise parks, whether it's playgrounds into flip-flops. Oh, sorry, I said playground. Flip-flops into playgrounds, my apologies. Whether it's cosmetic waste, all the way to that personal protective equipment that is out there. In fact, during COVID, we've been recycling PPE for 15 years, but during COVID, you can imagine the rates of face mask recycling just exploded with people wearing them on a daily basis. Whether it's contact lenses recycled at over 10,000 optometrists across the country, all the way to guitar strings that are recycled. Everything can go around, whether it's car seats, all the way to dirty diapers. What's important in these programs, whether it's even pharmaceutical blister packs that we recycle in the UK, is not only let's get it done, but how does it drive value, right? How does it drive, say, foot traffic to a retailer like Superdrug, or benefit to sponsoring brands and so on? Because the more we can do that, the bigger they get. And I'm very happy to share that as of recently, these are now growing even bigger. Many retailers are now developing these large ecosystems, if you will, of recycling kiosks. Whether this is in Australia, all the way to Germany, even France, where here we have competitors coming together, from Gillette recycling razor blades all the way to L'Oreal funding cosmetic recycling. Even mega systems, like this is outside a British retailer called Asda. I'm very happy to say that right now, as we speak, we're installing these at Walmart locations at select locations across the United States. And this will be live in 10 days from now. Actually less, in fact. Today's the 14th, in 8 days from now. But you also have to have fun. So for example, with Pepsi, when we've developed recycling bins, we try to integrate the idea of fun. So when you put a bottle in for Liverpool, for example, maybe that's the football club that you really like, then the entire kiosk lights up and you score a point for Liverpool. So it's important also to have some fun along the way, because people get excited and engaged when there's the idea of fun. So in the end, what we have found is that anything can go around. And I'll show you one other inspiring example. If you watch the Tokyo Olympics and you watch an athlete stand on the podiums, all those podiums were made by TerraCycle Japan from hard to recycle waste that was collected at retail locations across the country the year before. Now, not everything can be run through a for-profit business model. We try that because it's much more nimble and more scalable. But if it can't be, we use our nonprofit organization, the TerraCycle Foundation. You can learn more at the terracyclefoundation.org website, but we've developed and deployed these river trap devices. You can see these here that siphon off the waste that's floating in the river. Because in Thailand, the challenge is there's no money to invest into good waste management practices. So people are not trying to litter, but there's nowhere else to put the waste. And then come the rainy season, that tends to be washed out into canals and then rivers and then into the ocean. Last year alone, our foundation was able to collect 1 million pounds of the waste that you see in this picture. Now, that gets us to the circular economy starting to be bent, but it's not quite a circle. This looks like a fishhook, honestly. The next step that we have to really focus on is integrating the waste back into products, making sure products are a demand engine for the waste. Not just that products can be recycled, but that they're also a demand engine for recycled content. And that became our second division that we launched, helping companies make their products from recycled material. And so here the type of things we do is everything from collecting, that beach plastic I showed you earlier to turn into a bottle like this, world's first shampoo bottle made from beach plastic that she won an award from the United Nations and went live in 20 countries, all the way to rock and roll festival waste, into deodorant containers. And we're now even cleaning up the top of Mount Everest. This is a live project to turn the abandoned oxygen tanks that are made from stainless steel into luxury Swiss watches, and the tents into the bands. Those are made from nylon, into the bands for the watches as well. So this gets us to a circular economy based on recycling. And I would argue this is perhaps the best thing we can do today with disposable products. Make sure they get recycled and make sure they are made from recycled content. And how, as individuals, we can take part in this is let's make sure if we purchase, and I say if because the best thing we can do for the planet is not purchase. I'm going to come back to that at the very end of this discussion. But if we purchase, let's purchase from products that can be recycled, whether through your municipal recycling or through companies like TerraCycle, and that they are made from recycled content. We can choose those, and we can choose to avoid things that are not. Now, but is this the end point? And we've thought about where we can go beyond this. And there, maybe the answer is shifting from disposable production products to reusable ones. And this leads us to a recent division we launched called Loop. And Loop asked the question, well, if garbage was invented in the 1950s, as I mentioned earlier, what was life like before? And it was something like this. This gentleman existed. We bought our milk from the proverbial milkman, but we also mended our socks, cobbled our shoes. Many things were in reusable packaging. We didn't have disposability and consumption in the way we do today. And a strange thing happened as well. The package, as you can see him holding it here, was securitized by a deposit. So it was treated as an asset to the manufacturer. And then what happened? The 1950s came around. This, by the way, is a positive photo from the 1950s. And it's easy to vilify this photo, but it's important to empathize with why the actors in this photo are authentically smiling. And we would argue they're smiling because disposability brought about unparalleled convenience, product range, which is a form of convenience, and affordability. But a really strange thing happened. The package became property of the consumer. And is there a single disposable package you want to own when there's no content inside? I imagine no. And as such, it becomes a cog or a cost of goods sold to the manufacturer, meaning they have to pay for it every time you buy it. So the question became, how do we solve the unintended consequences of disposability, which is the waste crisis, and I would argue perhaps diminishing quality of products, while maintaining the virtues of affordability and convenience? And as we looked at the world of reuse out there, we found that there is already good large reuse systems in the US today. Propane tanks or beer kegs, both of those objects are highly reusable. But there's one weird issue, which is that when the propane tank is empty, you can't take it to the beer store to return it. And when your beer keg is empty, you can't take it to the place you got your propane tank. And so we thought we had to create a platform on top of which any brand can participate, as well as any retailer. And that flow you see down there today exists in the UK. This is live. It's also live in the US, but this particular example exists today in the UK. You can buy your coffee at McDonald's in a reusable Loop container and drop it off at a Tesco, their leading grocer. You can then buy your favorite laundry detergent or ketchup or shampoo container at that Tesco and then drop it off at a Burger King, where you can buy your sandwich and soda in a reusable package and drop it off somewhere else. This idea that you can buy anywhere and return anywhere. And so we created a platform where this now exists. And manufacturers can produce reusable versions of their products, either by looking at existing packaging, like that ketchup bottle, or packaging that already exists but hasn't been used in their ecosystem, or fully custom packaging, producing products that look like this. Whether it's ketchup all the way to cat litter, from soap all the way to aftershave, from face cream all the way to your favorite food products, even alcohol, all now in fully reusable packaging. But the packaging can also get innovative, whether it's how Tide now does this, all the way to Kraft Heinz with coffee and Unilever with laundry detergent, or how you can today in the US buy your Clorox wipes in reusable packaging. It goes on and on and on. And what we found is that reusable packaging not only is better for the environment, these are all live examples, by the way, but it's also more beautiful. Wouldn't you say this is a more beautiful shampoo bottle than a plastic one? Not only is it more beautiful, but in many cases, consumers also feel it's healthier for them. And then it can get highly innovative, whether it's ice cream, all the way to dish soap, and even your favorite dish detergent to a fast food restaurant. And so the way this comes to life today is in certain retailers, like Kroger in the United States, followed very soon by Walgreens and Giant and a number of other major retailers. You can see sections in the store that are dedicated to all these reusable products. They look normal. You just buy them and you pay a deposit when you're done. Then you can drop it off at any participating retailer to get your money back. We then take it, we check it in, sort it, store it, clean it, and then around it goes back to the manufacturer who refills it and sends it out again. And so it's still, in a way, waste management, except waste management where we're not sorting into material type, but into down to the product level. And instead of shredding and melting like recycling, it's cleaning. And so what's really interesting that I found in building out Loop and now seeing it scale physically in store with many retailers around the world, whether it's Eon in Japan, all the way to Tesco in the UK, to Carrefour in France, and then of course retailers like Kroger here in the United States, is that the most important thing we have to look at when doing sustainability innovation is convenience. People really love convenience. And so, and I'll give you a statistic, by the way, it's an interesting one. Today, 70+% of parents, new parents, trial reusable diapers, the cloth reusable diapers, 70%. And that's in the UK, France, Germany, and the US. But only 2% stick with them after one 2-week trial. And the reason that it's such a low amount of people stick is because they don't like the inconvenience of the reusable diapers, having to wash out the poop and so on. In fact, by the way, we have just launched reusable diapers in Loop recently. You can check that out at Loop by Charlie Banana if you're interested. And so convenience is everything. We feel that we have to make reuse feel like disposability to achieve the level of convenience that will attract consumers to adopt a reusable lifestyle versus a disposable one. But if we do, it can be magical what can occur. For example, this is Ajinomoto in Japan, a major food company that's doing Loop. This is the spice packaging on the left and the coffee packaging on the right. But because the package is an asset, of course, not only can it be made from beautiful stainless steel and so on, all that really good stuff, they're even impregnating real-time temperature and humidity sensors on the package. So through an app, you can log in and see how fresh your product is. Now, you couldn't do this on a package that is disposable because you'd have to effectively embed that cost and throw it away on every use. But in a reusable package, you certainly can. So I hope, today, and I want to thank you for spending this time with me, this gives you a little taste in how we're eliminating the idea of waste. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's some of that stuff I didn't even know. That's amazing work, and just to know that the impact you're making on a global scale is just amazing. So I know you're one of my personal heroes in the work that you all do with TerraCycle and Loop. Sarah had a question. She said here, how can we make recycle habit as a fashion icon to attract more youth?
God, it's a very, very good question. And, it's a tough one because I think there's two challenges. Maybe if we first identify the challenges, right, is recycling has confusion around it. And it's confusing because, each county runs has different budgets against recycling that are managed by different companies. So you have different economic inputs, different organizations who are, then doing the work. So what is recyclable in zip code A may not be what's recyclable in zip code B. So there's this confusion. And then there's also an unfortunate sort of distrust, if you will, on, hey, is that material even getting recycled when I put it in my recycling bin? And the reason, again, that there is that is because many times what recyclers collect may not be what they recycle because they're focusing on pulling out what has value, right? And so I think the most important thing that we need to look at is, even above recycling, I thought I was going to say this at the end of the discussion, is the number one vector we have to think about is what we purchase, and voting for the future with what we buy and what we don't buy. Because that, I think, is the ultimate ultimate democratic act we have. You don't have to be a citizen. You can be any age. You can be 5 years old and vote for the future with what you buy. You could have had a record that doesn't allow you to vote in the state, but allows you to vote with economics. And it's an active vote. You cannot vote that vote passively. And the vote of buying is active, as is the vote of not purchasing. It's just as active. And remember, think about it this way, right? Whatever we buy, more will appear tomorrow. And whatever we don't buy, less will appear tomorrow. And we cannot do that blindly, because I feel like we are, right? And we just have to open our eyes. And I think if we did that, and we really realize that whatever we buy, more will come out, maybe we're going to shop differently. And that's what I would first start, is let's really vote all the time and exercise that democratic right, and really do that by consciously purchasing. So that doesn't mean I say don't buy, but just think about that as you do the active purchase. Then let's buy things, if possible, that are, so buy less, first and foremost, then buy things that are reusable, if they're available to you. Then things that can be recycled, whether locally or through organizations like ours, and then try to avoid things that are not recyclable. So that's the first place I would start. Now, I haven't answered the question yet, right? So the next part is then going into, how do we make recycling exciting? Is we have to keep focused on trying to make it exciting. Things don't naturally stay sexy. We work on, being sexy and awesome. It takes time, effort to do that. And we have to do that every day and repeatedly do it, right? And I think we do a really good job with young folks. My kids are, in grade 1 and pre-K, and they're talking about reduce, reuse, recycle, and they're learning it, and the kids are very excited about it. But I just wonder do we do that all the way through into our adulthood and our professional lives? And I think the more we can, put an effort, right, into being excited about it, sharing that excitement with folks, I think that's what's going to allow it to stay topical and relevant, right? And we have to work at that. It's not one intervention won't do it. It's a consistent drumbeat to keep pushing that. And I think that's the same on whether it's what type of transportation you take, to your place of work, right? Or what type of lifestyle you have. We have to keep constantly reinforcing these things.
Perfect. Okay, Joe says here, what is the most important thing to do next? As a custom injection molder, we are poised for growth and would love to partner with others on new projects.
Well, great question. I think specifically because you are an injection molder, what I would say is the biggest area of focus I would recommend to think about is how to make sure the inputs to your processes are using recycled content. And not just any recycled content, because right now most major organizations have made big commitments around using the stuff that's very readily available. Recycled soda bottles like PET, recycled laundry detergent bottles like HDPE. I think the real challenge is valorizing the waste no one right now wants. Flexible films and complex materials, multi-materials. This would be, I think, the real breakthroughs, right? Because similar to when we made worm poop and we were picking the very best waste to make our product, today we are picking the very best garbage to use in recycled content, and we need to think about how do we create demand for materials that are not food grade PET and light colored HDPE and so on.
Okay, perfect. And then Sarah would like to know, where can we find the information on recycle around the city or county? What programs TerraCycle has for general citizens who want to learn this whole process and contribute whatever they can?
Well, a really good question. So historically, on the TerraCycle website, which is terracycle.com, you could see the programs we run. You can still do that today, but I'm very happy to say 2 days ago, I think it was maybe 3 days ago, we relaunched our website. This is a big development. So if you haven't been there, do check it out. And a new function that we've been enabling is the ability to start, and this is not, it's only on a few programs. It will be on most programs by the end of this year. It just takes a while for us to put that up. But the ability for, let's say you want to recycle Tide. You can do this actually today on TerraCycle's website, like a Tide package. Now, Tide laundry detergent, some package forms are highly recyclable locally, like that orange bottle. And if you go to our website and type in Tide, it will show you where you can recycle it locally, not with us, but with your local recycling authority or drop points that that may be accepting that type of package. And then if it's a package form that is not locally recyclable, then you could use TerraCycle. And the website actually now allows you to do that. And you could check that out on a page like Tide on our site. And then by the end of this year, you'll see that deployment on most of the programs that we run. We just have to get all that data together and put it together. But it's now finally something we're able to do.
Awesome. And Tom, I know we were talking about this before we started the webinar. You want to talk a little bit about your background, your
yes,
your,
yes. I'm
your,
a little
your
tethered in with cords here, but this is my office environment. We're speaking to you proudly from Trenton, New Jersey. And actually, this is probably one of the last times you'll see me in this office environment, because we're moving to a new headquarter building. This will become a operational innovation center for us. So this is still going to be TerraCycle, but just for our incubator. And then you'll see me in another building just a mile away next time we connect, which will be even more fantastic than this. But every detail here, and will be in all of our buildings, or our new one, and all of our offices around the world today, are made from waste. So this is all remnant carpet there, carpet that no one wanted. This is an old door. Every table here is an old door. It's old soda bottles. You also maybe even see, the graffiti. Trenton is an inner city, and there's a lot of graffiti artists here. They've nowhere to paint. And so the inside we paint once, but the outside of our building is open to artists whenever they want. And when it's warm, like today, and there's a couple of artists outside today, doing their thing. Usually, the building is repainted almost every 2 weeks, top to bottom, with amazing, beautiful graffiti art from inner city artists. And so this is sort of, this idea of the power of purpose. I mean, I love walking into a building and it's always brand new art. And then we get thanked for it. And I did nothing but just say, you're allowed to paint on our walls, right? And there's some really exciting sort of ideas that come out of that. But that's what this sort of space is all about.
That's beautiful. I love that. Are there pictures of the outside graffiti on your website where people can see it?
Yes. If you go to TerraCycle's website, and I think if you click on About TerraCycle, you have to click a couple of buttons, but there is an entire graffiti section, so you can see some of the examples of the type of art that is produced.
Very cool. Sarah just mentioned to me in India, my parents in rural village get very small amount to sell plastic materials. So in US, how we can encourage general citizens some kind of award or recognition who follow day-to-day habits of recycling would be just a small initiative where can I post ideas?
Well, it's a really good point. I think this idea of incentive is very important. It's come up twice, in the question so far, right? I think the first incentive is, of course, let's steward the planet. And I know it's not a monetary incentive, but an important one. Incentives can also be emotional incentives, ideas of, like, let's make people proud and smile. And we also do try, at least in our programs, to layer on other more concrete incentives or material incentives as much as we can. So in some of our programs, some of the waste that's collected is turned into playgrounds or gardens. I mean, just in the US alone, we've built, I think, over 50 playgrounds from waste that's donated to schools across the country, and then dozens of inner city gardens and community gardens. But also in many of our programs, and you can access this today for free in the free programs, many of them give a donation for every pound of waste you collect to a school or charity of your choice. And we've given away over $45 million in these forms of donations as well. So it's important to note, though, right? It's so important that incentive doesn't mean, right, that these programs, that we're making money on these materials, right? Typically, like if you take a coffee capsule, it may cost $1 to collect it, may cost 75 cents to process it, and the material value may only be 2 cents, right? But it is, I think, the idea of incentivizing people's behavior is important to try to get the engine started, and then go from there.
Okay, and then looks like we have one more question here
Sure.
from April, and April would like to know, what can you do with old office chairs? Any way to recycle those?
Well, so funny story. All the office chairs, you may notice here, if you see that little brown one, or they're all used chairs from offices that do renovation. So first, he used them, right? Offices tend to throw out office chairs that are just fine. It's crazy. But in fact, we've outfitted every one of our offices around the world. We have about 600 team members. Every one of us sits in chairs that are found, in office renovations, when people throw them out. So there's a lot of reuse opportunities, and so on. But we do recycling of furniture, and there what we do is we shred it, separate the woods from the metals, from the polymers, and then recycle those into downstream applications.
Awesome. Well, Tom, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know, especially right now with Earth Day coming up, you're probably highly requested for many of these appearances. So I really appreciate that you take the time every year to connect with us and give us your time and your knowledge and share all this wonderful information. So we really appreciate that. And
Well, it's my absolute pleasure, and wish everyone here a very happy upcoming Earth Day.
great. Thank
Yay.
you. Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.